This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com with my weekly review of the points I find interesting in Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer newsletter. We'll start with MMA because it's a huge MMA news day. Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler is off. We knew something was fishy when they had a press conference in Dublin last week with about 12,000 tickets out. They were free tickets, but still uh, and Conor McGregor canceled it, and the UFC canceled it. So now they are saying that McGregor is injured, so the fight is off. They did have a gate of over 20 million for this UFC 303 event in Las Vegas. Now it's going to be Alex Pereira, which you know what? I He's a way less star than McGregor. I can't even pronounce his last name, and although I've heard his name, I mean, it's very disappointing that that fight is canceled because he is the biggest star UFC has. Even though he's only won one fight in the past 7 years, it goes to show you that him being a great entertainer and a great character is more important than wins and losses. There is some people wondering if this had to do really with a pay issue for UFC, that the money was not enough. No one will really ever know the truth, but it is disappointing. The second biggest draw in UFC is John Jones, who is far, far, far less of a draw than McGregor, despite being possibly the greatest fighter of all time, undefeated. And like the one drug test he failed, he was doing like serious drugs before a fight and he still won the fight, but he doesn't have the personality that McGregor has. So that's disappointing. However, I mean UFC is still doing better business than ever. The brand is more popular than ever. It's not like this is going to hurt UFC or McGregor at all. He's still in the news huge right now. I still think WWE should use McGregor. He would be the biggest star in wrestling, and the potential McGregor versus The Rock wrestling match, I truly believe could be the biggest match in any combat sports domain. Conor McGregor versus The Rock in WWE. And McGregor wouldn't have to worry about injuries as much. I'm sure they would pay him a huge amount of money. I think that will eventually happen, McGregor in WWE. The last time McGregor actually fought was a loss November 12th, 2022 to Dustin Poirier. Apparently, also in UFC news, that thing where Dana White appeared on the Howie Mandel show and walked off, that was a work. It's come out now that that was a work. I actually watched Dana White on another podcast last night, and he was saying part of the appeal of the UFC is you don't know who's going to win or not in most cases. And that is something that we don't have in WWE right now. The finishes are very predictable. They don't do a good job of making people wonder who is going to win or not, which is why I think interest in their last couple of premium live events with Rhodes against AJ Styles and Rhodes against Jake or Logan Paul have been very low interest overall. The Jake Paul, speaking of the Paul brothers versus Mike Tyson fight at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, has been delayed till November 15th. Who knows if that will actually happen or not. By the way, for the McGregor fight, I actually interviewed Simon Rochford, a very successful Irish promoter, months ago, and he predicted that the McGregor fight wouldn't happen months ago. So go back and look at that interview I did with Simon Rochford. Speaking of WWE's lack of interest in live events, they're doing their first ever pay-per-view in Scotland this weekend in an arena that holds only 14,300. They only have 10,500 tickets out right now, including comps. And SmackDown tonight only has about 9,700 tickets out. So you would think the first ever pay-per-view in Scotland would be like an instant sellout, particularly with Drew McIntyre expected to win Damian Priest's title on the show. But it's not, which shows you two things. For one thing, the interest in WWE is down. People can say they're in a renaissance period all they want. Although it's way more interesting than AEW, interest has gone down since WrestleMania considerably. Drew McIntyre is not as over as people think in Scotland. If it's not, if I mean, there's two shows. When have they ever done a TV taping or pay-per-view from Scotland? They're not sold out, and it's not even that big of an arena. The other thing it shows is nobody really cares about this world title that Damian Priest holds because everybody knows the one that Cody Rhodes holds is actually the most important title in wrestling. That's the shoot. Whether I like Cody Rhodes or not, that's the world title. Calling the other title a world title cheapens the value of the world title. They should have come up with another name for it. It's confusing, and obviously it's not over if you can't sell out a world title match. I mean, it could be sold out by Showtime, or they'll paper it, or they'll block off more seats and call it a sellout. But I think they should be doing a lot better. Speaking of shows that weren't sold out, NXT Battleground, their premium live event. Again, this is what they want to call pay-per-views now. At the UFC Apex over the weekend, only had 277 paid. And apparently there was noticeable empty seats on camera for the few people that actually watched it. Cody Rhodes, speaking of him getting cold, he appeared on NXT this week, and the rating was actually down from last week. Chad Gable is expected to re-sign with WWE. His contract is coming up. Nothing against him other than he's too small really for me to get into. I'm not into the character. I have nothing against him as a person. Good for him that he's going to get a good offer and re-sign. He's going through the biggest push of his career right now. But I don't see the appeal of Chad Gable. WWE and Pro Wrestling Noah are going to announce some type of deal tomorrow in Yokohama. WWE has been in negotiations with Pro Wrestling Noah in Japan for a while. Now that AEW, I mean, some people think, I mean, they're very tight with New Japan. I mean, AEW's pretty much bought all of the New Japan top stars. They constantly put New Japan over on their programming to their own detriment. And for instance, John Moxley is the New Japan champion. So the theory is WWE is going to work with Pro Wrestling Noah. By the way, the wrestling business in Japan right now is like at an all-time low in popularity. It's very cold. The last Pro Wrestling Noah show at Kurokan Hall last week didn't even get 1,000 fans. So they could use a boost from WWE, and I'll talk more about the lack of interest in New Japan a little bit later. But they recently had a big show that did not draw very well. Noah has used Charlie Dempsey, Steve Regal's kid, for a world title match in the past, which they call the GHC title. Hulk Hogan, who got popular from being anti-drugs. I mean, there's nothing wrong with beer, but he's now endorsing beer and marijuana. So far from say your prayers, take your vitamins, and believe in them. Believe in yourself. I mean, I would try the beer. I still haven't tried Steve Austin's beer. It's not available in Canada. Maybe next time I go to the US, I should do a tasting of it. Although I'm in training right now and avoiding alcohol because I'm wrestling June 29th and August 31st. Dwayne Johnson has signed a deal with Disney. He's going to be producing content for their streaming platforms. He's going to be doing movies, some of which he's going to be a part of. His Mona 2 is coming out July 10th. Priscilla Kelly is out of action right now. No timetable for her return. I think there's a Priscilla Kelly versus Tessa Blanchard match on this channel. WWE canceled house shows in Kennewick, Washington, and Boise, Idaho. The advances were not strong. Again, more signs that this Cody Rhodes era, the people liked him chasing the title. Roman Reigns was over. The Rock really gave a boost to WWE, but as far as Cody Rhodes as champion, I mean, they're canceling shows for crying out loud. Here's something interesting that Dave Meltzer reported. The April 15th Raw in Montreal, which was actually the Raw that broke WWE's television sellout streak. The main event was Sami Zayn against Chad Gable, had 11,614 with 1,095 comps. And Dave Meltzer points out that Michael Cole had broadcasted during the broadcast. There was over 15,000 people in the building. The real number was 11,614. The Raw coming here July 8th in Ottawa has 6,845 out. That's more than double what AEW had here a couple of months ago. WWE Raw this week in Toledo, Ohio had 6,800. SmackDown in Louisville, Kentucky at the YUM Center had 9,722 tickets out. The next night, UFC at the same building had 19,578 tickets out. So UFC over doubled the SmackDown attendance. More signs that people keep on saying WWE is doing so great. UFC doubled there. I'm not saying 9,000 is bad. That's way better than like pre-pandemic. I mean, they were getting 4 or 5,000 people. They're still doing good overall, but I mean, they got less than half what UFC did. The notable thing about that is that's the first time UFC and WWE, the TKO group, got a deal on an arena for doing WWE and UFC back to back. In AEW news, Jeff Hardy, he's been cleared to return for months from Sammy Guevara, who injured his nose. By the way, Sammy Guevara's suspension is over. They just haven't used him again, to my knowledge. Here's the dumb thing about Jeff Hardy, okay? You guys, Jeff Hardy is a name. He's expected to go to TNA, join his brother in TNA when his contract expires anytime now. Supposedly his contract's going to expire anytime now. Why does Tony Khan? This just boggles my freaking mind. He uses no names on his shows, okay? And then ratings go down and down and down. No names versus no names all the time. They had Jeff Hardy under contract, and he's been cleared to return for months, and they don't even use him to put people over on his way out. That makes no sense. This is why AEW frustrates the hell out of me. You're paying Jeff Hardy all this money. Have him put people over every week at the very least. Why the hell do you put these guys under contract if you're not at least going to use them to get people over? AEW Collision last Saturday in Iowa, 2,158 people. AEW Dynamite in Des Moines last Saturday or this Wednesday. They were in Council Bluff for Collision. Des Moines Wednesday, 2,739 tickets. Oh, here's something interesting for all you Will Ospreay people that follow him. AEW's paying him millions. Osprey versus Ray Phoenix was the main event of this show, by the way. This was like the second lowest viewership since January 2021. Osprey has been a flop as far as building interest in AEW so far. The match started at 626,000 viewers were watching at the start of the match. 608,000 were watching at the end. So they lost almost 20,000 viewers during that match, which goes to show you the leg slapping. People are getting sick and tired of watching that crap. AEW Rampage did its lowest viewership ever last Friday night, 0.09, 119,000 viewers in the 18 to 49 demo. The lowest number of viewers the show has ever done in its regular time slot. Again, they have Jeff Hardy under contract. Guess what the main event was for this lowest viewership ever Rampage? Serena Deeb versus Mina Shekuwaka. And I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing her last name wrong. You have Jeff Hardy under contract, and you put this match on as your main event of Rampage, while Jeff Hardy's just sitting at home collecting a paycheck, and you wonder why you're hitting viewership lows. Kira Hogan is out with shoulder surgery. Charlotte Renegade, who I've never heard of from AEW, is out with an injury. New Japan presented one of its biggest events of the year, Dominion. It was the biggest show of the year as far as name value went, according to Dave Meltzer. Name value of junior heavyweights. The main event of the actual show was Jon Moxley versus Evil. The show drew 7,254. The show had previously sold out every Dominion big show from 2015 to 2020. So they have Jon Moxley in the main event. I have nothing against Jon Moxley. Supposedly he's getting $6 million a year in AEW, but he's wrestling in New Japan here, and yeah, only about 7,000 tickets for one of their big shows. So again, New Japan's at a low in popularity. I like Jon Moxley. I would like to wrestle Jon Moxley. Both TNA and New Japan did not crack a rating this week on Access TV. So they didn't even get a 0.01 rating. Why Tony Khan thinks this company that does not even get a 0.01 rating, why he wants to feature these wrestlers on his AEW show rather than guys like Jeff Hardy and the tons of other names that they had under contract, such as like Jake Hager, who was just released. They had Mark Henry just released. All these names, but no, let's put on New Japan's less popular than ever instead of ex WWE guys who have name value and could put over our young talent. Let's just infest the show with New Japan talent. Anyways, New Japan did not crack a rating this week, neither did TNA. Part 2 of Who Killed WCW was down 0.02 rating this week from 0.03. I did a review of that last night. There was a lot of false facts in that show. Dave Meltzer also says the same thing. The bullshit meter was very high on that show. And for all the people, and I'll say it again, that said it was time for Goldberg to lose when they killed the streak. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. They were still on the climb at that point. And Goldberg losing was just another crack in the armor. Thank you, James. Thank you for the good luck on my upcoming match, June the 29th in Napanee, Ontario, that I'm training really hard for. And then I'm also teaming with the Warlord. I'm going to be tag teaming with him, managed by Katie Lee Burchill, on August 31st in Petawawa, Ontario. Tickets for that are at ticketweb.ca. Same for the Napanee event. They're going to be awesome events, and they're going to be recorded for the